put the ghost in the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Get people to go right away, okay, because people also want to know when they've clicked onto the film and they start watching, they have something in mind. What is this going to be? Okay, it's going to be this ghost horror film, right? Haunted house horror film. If they don't get the impression after the first 5 minutes that that is exactly what it is, they're going to switch off the movie, which means you need to make sure that you set the expectations with the trailer and you meet those expectations already in the first 5 minutes.
Welcome to the Filmmaker Mixer podcast, the podcast by filmmakers for filmmakers. Filmmaker Mixer is a creative hub where aspiring and established filmmakers come together to share experiences, insights, strategies, and inspiration.
Hello, everybody. This is the Filmmaker Mixer podcast, and today we get into sci-fi, video on demand, and the power of anthologies. We have filmmaker ZB Siwek on the phone, or on the Zoom call, rather. And ZB, welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you a lot for having me on.
Tell us, what is Merge, this anthology you've put together?
Sure. So, a little bit about me. I started a company called Circle about 8 years ago, where we really tried to figure out how some of us can make some money out of the film business,
Wouldn't
rather
that be
than just
nice?
having, just instead of having it as a hobby, turning it into a viable business or a career. So we're always on the lookout of helping independent filmmakers try and earn more revenue from their films. And as we all know, most short films don't make much money. So what we've decided to start doing is packaging short films into anthologies where we have a series of 5 or 6 short films and we distribute those films as a feature length product. And that's exactly what Merge was. It's a sci-fi anthology put together of a couple of different short films with a similar theme that we decided to distribute as a feature length film.
And was Merge the first project you did with this idea in mind?
No, it was actually the second, but this was the first one that really took off and became quite successful in the first couple of months.
Why do you think this one was more successful? Was it that did you change your strategy from the first to this one, or?
Yeah, it was a series of things. The first one, I think, subjectively, I think the shorts were better. So the film perhaps was better put together. It was more coherent, so the shorts were a lot more related to each other. But other than that, it was also the marketing strategy. I think our poster was better. The trailers and the little videos that we put out to try and promote the film were better. And in general, we had a lot of learnings from that first anthology that we put out, which we implemented on this one.
Interesting. Well, I want to talk more about that, but before we do, what's your background? Are you a filmmaker by trade? Are you a businessman? How did you get started?
Well, a little bit of both. So I started off as a film producer. I initially I always thought I wanted to be a director. That dream got squashed in my first year of university, where my professors told me you have absolutely zero creative talent. And I agree with them actually. So I decided let me go into the producing aspect because I was more interested in the spreadsheets than I was in the creative aspect. Left university, started working as a film producer and freelancing. And I was doing okay, but even doing okay means that you're really struggling to pay the bills most of the
Right.
time as a filmmaker. So I actually had a change of career paths and I worked in marketing for over 5 years. I went to work as the head of marketing for a company called Storytellers, completely unrelated to the film industry, but they work more in books actually. But then I came back into the film industry, and what I started doing was implementing all of that knowledge I got in marketing into the film industry because I realized a lot of people who are making films right now, they can't earn enough revenue because they don't quite understand how the marketing aspect works. So that I've sort of brought that knowledge back in, and I also started Circle, which again is that organization that really helps filmmakers earn more revenue and build more sustainable careers.
Would you describe Circle as a distribution company? Because it's not exactly, I mean, you handle
Oh,
distribution, but you also
yeah.
package the projects, put together the anthology. So it's kind of a hybrid, I guess, of production company and distribution. Is that correct to say or no?
Yeah, that's right. And that's just one branch of what we do because we run events and workshops
Oh,
and
cool.
a variety of different things. But yeah, specifically kind of talking about Merge and these anthologies, we accept submissions from short films. We curate those short films and we put them into, we package them into anthologies. We do a lot of the marketing. We put together our own posters, trailers. We work closely with all the filmmakers on those short films as well, so that we all, collaborate together on promoting it. And actually, the first ever anthology that we created had a short film on which I was the main producer. From about, I think I produced that short film about 9 or 10 years ago. But that was the anthology before Merge.
So, what sets this distribution plan apart from these YouTube channels like Amuleto and different things that, there are YouTube channels that also aggregate shorts and put them out there. And I honestly don't know how they work or how they generate income if they do. But how is yours set apart from that?
Yeah, so you have as an example, you have a YouTube channel called Dust, which
Right,
is
right,
famous
right, right,
for short sci-fi films,
right.
right? And then you have the other one, something starting with an A, which is for horror films and so on.
Right,
So
right,
you
right.
have a lot of those YouTube channels. Now, from what I understand, those YouTube channels have millions of subscribers, and they make money. They definitely make money, but not for the filmmakers. So
Right.
from what I understand, you actually submit to those platforms through Film Freeway. If you want your short film to be on there, you pay a submission fee. And if your film is selected, it will be put on that platform, but the filmmakers don't actually earn revenue from that.
Interesting.
Revenue goes to, you get the privilege of being on there and getting exposure, but you don't earn the revenue. What we do at CineCircle is we curate those short films and we put them into anthologies, and then we put them onto more traditional platforms like Amazon, Apple TV, Tubi. The ones that do go on YouTube go onto the official YouTube movies uh, channel run by YouTube. So we go on the more mainstream platforms that normally are for regular feature films.
So I think the trick, in my opinion, the trick to an anthology film doing well from the sense of viewers wanting to watch it and get involved in that and in it as a feature is it can't feel scattered. It can't feel like a lot of different shorts. So it sounds like you go to the extra length of trying to find shorts that work together to feel like they are one cohesive feature. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and that is pretty hard to do.
Yeah, I would think.
I can't say we fully figured it out yet, and I can't say we've done it perfectly on any of our anthologies quite yet. But there's a few things. First of all, trying to make sure obviously it's the same genre, and with similar themes, perhaps that are showing. That are showing something from different points of view. So, with sci-fi, I think sci-fi right now is actually a really important genre just because you've got things that are happening right now with AI and so on. It's people can create sci-fi films that seem like in a really distant future that actually might be happening in real life in 2 years. So I think it's quite an important genre. But with themes of AI and so on that really link those films together. Um, but it is tricky to do because a lot of short films are very different. Yeah, interestingly, there is another feature film that I just spoke to a filmmaker who did a film called The Days Ahead, which was three short films about showing a nuclear war and people being in a bunker. But it was all the short films was someone who was really prepared, someone who was sort of prepared, and someone who was not prepared at all. And it was funny because the filmmaker actually wasn't a filmmaker. He runs a company that creates filters for nuclear bunkers. So his first film was just a promo
Like an
essentially.
ad.
Yeah, and then he caught the filmmaker bug and then created two more and then decided to put them into an anthology. But it's I actually think right now the way that viewers watch content online, a lot of people don't want to sit through a whole hour and a half long film. Actually, if it's broken up into six individual films, it seems to be more digestible for people where they go, okay, it's going to be 10 minutes until the next story. And so I think there is more of a place for short films now in sort of the mainstream audiences than there was, say, 10 years ago.
Have you thought about doing this as episodic? Would that be something you could market, like a Black Mirror or something where it's branded as a series and each
Yeah.
of the short films stands alone as an episode? Would that make sense? Or
Yeah, it's something that we're actually considering doing. It's just difficult. First of all, when you create those episodes, they need to be long enough to keep people engaged. So,
right.
if you have a short film that's 8 minutes long, after 8 minutes, there's a clear break, which gives audiences a good excuse to stop watching. Whereas what we do with our anthologies, and is actually a requirement of our aggregator and of a lot of platforms, is that the anthologies do not have very clear breaks in between them, which means if you watch Merge, the breaks in between the films are basically not there. It just goes straight from
It's
one
just
into the other.
seamless.
Yeah, it's seamless, which means people, don't really realize that the next film was happening until about a minute later when they realize, oh, wait, this is completely different actors and feel. And that's done by those platforms. They create that as a requirement because they know if the break is too clear, people might switch off. Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
And with video on demand, as you're distributing these projects, I guess my next question would be throwing back to what I said about doing it as episodic or a series of some kind. Does that change how you would sell it? Could you sell a series as easily or the same way you would a feature, or is it just a totally different animal?
It's pretty similar in the way, so the process of distributing it, putting it on platforms would be quite similar. There is a question mark as to how well it will be performed because I've never distributed a series before. I've
Right.
distributed features, I've distributed short film anthologies. I've never done it particularly with a series, so there would be a question mark there as to how well it would do. But that said, also people like watch a lot of series now.
Yeah.
And Merge as an example it went to number 6 in the top 10 movies on Prime Video UK when it first
Wow.
came out. Now the top 6 in the top 10 movies is very different to the top 6 in the top 10 shows. The series have way, way bigger numbers in terms of viewership than movies do, even on a massive platform like Amazon. But that also means there's more competition and so on. So it's more difficult to keep viewers engaged across multiple episodes. So there are pros and cons to trying it out.
Well, what's the secret to getting the word out on these projects? For example, I know that with Amazon Prime, you can upload your own feature, for example. But how do you get people to know it's there? How do you get people to be aware that it's there and actually find it and watch it? That's something I don't understand how that works. How do you, I guess the question is, how do you market the film?
Yeah. It's worth pointing out that you actually can't put a film anymore yourself really on Amazon. They kind of
Really? I
close
didn't
it
know
off
that.
unless you've been grandfathered in and you already have an account. But if you try to do it, right now by yourself, you won't be able to,
Oh, I
which means
didn't
you have to
know.
go to an aggregator for someone who already has that older account.
Interesting.
Um, so yeah. But now, if it's still not like massively difficult to put your film onto certain platforms. What is difficult is to get people to watch it on there. And I find that the most sort of underrated marketing strategy is not promoting the film, but actually the biggest marketing strategy is packaging the film in the right way. So
Yeah, explain
with
that.
yeah. So, if you have a film, the film by itself is just a film, but the package is the poster, the trailer, the online presence of the film. All of that put together means that when someone comes across your project, they go, or your film on a platform like Amazon, they go, "Oh, that's the one that I'd want to watch." Because they're making that decision not based on the quality of the film. They haven't seen the film. It's the branding and the positioning of the film. So as an example, Merge. Merge has 6 films. Some of them are very much sort of almost like a drama. You have an AI robot that has just been, released essentially to live, by themselves, and they're taking their first steps by themselves. And it's just a journey of that AI just walking through a neighborhood, basically. And it's a very drama-like type, very kind of, human almost led type project. And then you have another one, the first one, for example, where there is a lot of VFX. It's very, kind of they put a lot of money into the cinematography, into the VFX. They have helicopters crashing into buildings and things like that. So the question is, how do we position this film? And we knew that people would be a lot more willing to watch a film that's more action sci-fi than drama sci-fi. So, for example, on the poster of the film, we put a building exploding and falling down. And really, therefore, we are positioning this and packaging this as a sort of action sci-fi anthology. And that's part of the reason why it did significantly better than probably it would have if we showed it as more of a low budget drama, for example. And we did the same with the trailer, where the opening shots of the trailer are VFX and action heavy. So it's all about how you position your film, because at the end of the day, when someone's on a platform like Tubi, they are scrolling through hundreds of posters, and based on that poster, your poster needs to stand out from the crowd to get people to go, oh, that looks interesting. You're not going to do that if you have a vanilla poster. It's going to be
Right.
something that really stands out. So that's what I mean about packaging.
And do the platforms, going to try to ask this question. I'm not sure how to ask it exactly, but do do the platforms push certain projects more or less based on their performance? Or
Yeah.
I guess is it an equal playing field on Tubi when when you're searching and trying to find movies you want to watch? Are they aggregating, is Tubi, for example, or any streamer aggregating what they think you'll like? How do you win that battle? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, it's worth pointing out that there are certain things that your project can have or your film can have, which means that automatically will do better no matter how it's performing on the platform. If your film has Brad Pitt in it, they're going to push it no matter what, right?
Right,
They
right.
just will. If your film has a big production company, so the same film released by a small distributor or released by an aggregator like FilmHub, and that same film being released by, A24 or whatever, is going to do vastly different because it will get this premium shelf space on those platforms just right off the bat, right? But now let's just position say, okay, forget about the really big films. If you have a bunch of independent films that go onto the platform, Amazon also knows based off of certain things such as how your poster looks, what genre it is, how much to push your film. So dramas don't tend to do as well as sci-fi or horror films, for example. So they will always push sci-fi and horror films better. Next, it will look at, okay, how much interest is this film getting? And that's mainly the poster.
And
So
and and how
how
do
big
they how do they measure that?
the interest.
Yeah, how do they measure the interest from the, I mean, is it engagement
Yeah,
with,
so it's yeah. So it's literally how many people are clicking on your film. So based on, okay, 1,000 people scrolled past your poster and 500 of them clicked on your film. That is a very good result. Whereas here, 1,000 people scrolled past this poster and only 10 clicked on the link. Right. Let's just bury this film because it doesn't seem to be doing particularly well. So your poster needs to stand out because that's the first thing that people see. People need to click on that. But then the one of the most important thing is actually once people start watching your film, what is the viewer retention like? On average, are people watching 5% of your film, 20% of your film, 60% of your film, 80% of your film? Depending on, the average viewer retention, it will either push that to a lot more people or it will very, very quickly make sure that no one's seeing that film because at the end of the day, Amazon only wants to show high quality content to people.
what's tricky about that, and I've had this conversation with filmmakers before, when you're, going to the theater and you made that commitment and you're going to sit down and watch that movie, you've already made the commitment to be there. And with streaming, it's so easy to just, click off, click off, click off, and go to the next thing. Um, I'm sure you don't have an answer to this question because it's a big question, and all filmmakers wish they had this answer. But what do you think? Well, let me put it this way: if you were talking to filmmakers who wanted to submit to your site their short film, do you have advice on how to make the film as engaging as possible? I know that's a really broad question, and there's a million answers to
Yeah.
that, but you've got to fight that audience member who's just going to scroll past it. So
Yeah.
what?
Well, so you gotta when you think about, because in marketing you always think about the psychology, right? And here the psychology is, that if someone's watched 30% of your film, they're more likely to keep watching the film than if they watched 3% of your film. So the more of your film that they watch, the more likely they are to watch it till the end. Which essentially means that in the past, when you would go to the cinema, the most important was the ending, because the most important is the feeling of when the film is finished, because everyone sat through an entire film. So even if the film, you sometimes watch films that weren't particularly good, but they had a really good last 10 minutes, and suddenly you're like, this is a great film, because you walk
Right.
out with the last scene in mind.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, Whereas now it's sort of the opposite, right? So in the past, filmmakers would put all of their budget and time and effort into the last scene. Whereas now, Matt Damon, and Ben Affleck, when they did The Rip very recently, they said they needed to relearn all of filmmaking essentially, because now for streamers, Netflix was saying, hey, can we not put all this budget into the last scene? Can you actually spend the most money on the opening 5 minutes? And they were like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But you need to engage people very, very early on. So make sure that the first couple of minutes is really engaging and also very clear. So if you're making a horror film, there's got to be horror elements in the first 5 minutes. Like, don't spend the first 10 minutes setting the scene. The family moves into the new neighborhood and they go into their house, and only 15 minutes later, you finally, see a ghost. You put the ghost in the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Get people to go right away, okay, because people also want to know, when they've clicked onto the film and they start watching, they have something in mind. What is this going to be? Okay, it's going to be this ghost horror film, right? Haunted house horror film. If they don't get the impression after the first 5 minutes that that is exactly what it is, they're going to switch off the movie, which means you need to make sure that you set the expectations with the trailer and you meet those expectations already in the first 5 minutes of the film rather than at the very end. And aside from that, just pacing is really important. Have people watch your film who you don't know and ask them, like, was it actually engaging? Because most indie filmmakers, they can cut off a good 15 minutes out of their film and they won't lose much, but they will gain the people's interest throughout.
And I think, in my opinion, to keep an audience engaged, it's not just about the action or it's not about the busyness of the film. It's about posing questions that need to be answered. It's about promising something that might be become a different thing. You need to keep their brain engaged in a way to want to stay connected to the project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And actually, what was the film that specifically comes to mind? I believe it was the first Deadpool that comes to mind, where I remember watching the first minute thinking, I have 20 questions from this first 1 minute that I need answers to. Like,
Yeah.
who is that? What was that? Why was this happening? So getting people curious. I think curiosity is the most the sort of the strongest psychological urge that people can't fight. If you're curious about something, you will stick around until the very end, right? Which is why, if someone's curious, they will click on an ad. If someone's curious about something, they will, even if they know that they're probably going to be let down in the end, curiosity is something that people can't shake. They just have to find out. So if you can build curiosity in the first couple of minutes, people will stick around until they find out essentially whatever they were curious about.
It's almost the challenge to the filmmaker and the storyteller to, like you said, if you're putting everything up front at the beginning, you're promising, hey, this is what this movie is, and I'm going to keep you engaged. Now your job is, how do I really step that up and twist it for the end so I still get that satisfying ending?
Yeah.
How do you get both, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and and that's something that's actually really hard to do.
It
Like,
is.
and this is exactly why I realized I am not a writer because I genuinely can't do it. I'm very good at copywriting for ads, for example, but I very quickly realized writing a really, really engaging script is extremely difficult. It's
Right.
extremely difficult. The one thing that I would recommend people do is make sure that they've reviewed things that were done in the past, so that they know. So, as an example, there is a lot of short filmmakers who don't watch short films. They watch feature films, and then they go to write a short film, and they think they're just writing a shorter feature film.
They're
Those
they're
are
they're
two. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but you go ahead, then I'll comment.
They're very different things. They're very different ways of creating a story, setting it up, and finishing it. So if you're a short filmmaker, watch more short films. And even if you're creating a feature film, most filmmakers who are writing their first screenplay have never read a screenplay. They've only watched the films. The screenplays and the films are very different. So read a bunch of scripts. There's places online where you can, from all the famous movies, you can find the scripts online. Read those scripts before you start writing your own, because you'll see this kind of a script translated to this kind of a movie. Ah, I see the differences. So I think it's important to do that research before you start writing a story.
Yeah, and I totally agree. First of all, one of the things I was going to mention about short films is a lot of filmmakers, that I've worked with, first-time filmmakers, when they do a short film, they think they're making an event. They look at the short film as a piece of something else, and it still has to have a beginning, middle, and end. Has to have what I call a button on the end to really make it stick the landing. You've got to think of that short film as a self-contained moment, almost like a joke. A good joke has a setup, and then you pull the rug out from under it at the end, and that's where you get the laugh. A short film, even if it's a thriller or a horror or whatever, has to do the same thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that ending in short films is really important. But also just have a think about what you really want to say with that film. Because there's some short films where all you really want is scare people at the end or make people laugh, or or something along those lines. Then it's almost, there's some comedy short films which are really just like a prolonged joke in a
Right.
sense, and you're just waiting for that punchline at the end, and it's really all a setup to that punchline. But there's also some short films where you're trying to create a new world, or you're trying to really say something. And I think the best short films are ones where the filmmakers really wanted to say something and really wanted to think about what do you want the audience to walk away with, like the reaction. And if it's, oh, that was cool, that tends to not be good enough. Like I always think that at the end of a film we should be feeling something. And what is that emotion that you want from them? Do you want them to be laughing? Do you want them to be crying? Do you want them to be thinking about something specific? Do you want them to be scared? Like, what is that emotion that you want to invoke for the film? And what is it that you want to really say?
Right. Well, as audience members, we want to feel something. We want to feel happy, sad, scared, motivated, inspired. That's the great thing about, in your case with Merge Sci-Fi, you can make social commentary and still have the popcorn of a sci-fi or even a horror
Yeah.
film, but you can still make social commentaries that people can understand and relate to, and talk about big ideas hidden in something fun like sci-fi.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And I mean, to be honest, sci-fi is my favorite genre. And what I love is that, especially creating a new world, and slowly it's the curiosity at the beginning. We're like, where are we? What year are we in? What is this new world that we're going to be introduced to, right? Like, what is this new reality? Like that's what I love about sci-fi, and it is that curiosity that's that's building throughout the film as you learn more and more about this new world.
Right, right. Well, ZB, for people who want to hear more about what you're up to, or maybe submit, a short film, how do they contact you?
Sure. So you can find us at cinecircle.co.uk. We're based in the UK, but we accept projects from all around the world. So yeah, you can follow us on socials at CineCircle UK. So yeah, if you've got any shorts that you'd like to be featured in, in one of our upcoming anthologies, get in touch. Or if you are just filmmakers and you're looking to find more ways to earn money from your film projects or to build your careers, then yeah, check us out and check out some of the things that we do.
Awesome. Well, don't hang up yet. I'm going to wrap up this conversation, but I want to chat with you just for a little bit after we stop the call. But thanks for joining us. It's been fun.
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right,
all for having me.
Take care, man.
Thank you for listening to the Filmmaker Mixer podcast, a podcast created and hosted by filmmakers Jeff Stolen and Andrew Lamping, and produced by Melody Lopez.
Our theme song was composed by Stephen D. Bennett.
Make sure to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and stay tuned for future episodes.